Good afternoon, 3:06 now, News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up on today's program, I've got Jason Miyares, the Attorney General from Virginia, at 5 o'clock. We'll get an update on criminality in Loudoun County. And then Andy Biggs is here, the congressman, at 5:30 today. A lot to talk about with him. I want to get an update on that impeachment inquiry and this big budget fight going through the weekend and even into today. Will Congress ever again pass a budget on time? Is it possible? We'll ask Congressman Andy Biggs, and we'll chat with you at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yes, there's a lot of drama to get to, including just people on the right fighting amongst themselves, and we'll do that throughout the course of this program. But first, I want to concentrate on California's new unelected senator. Her name, Laphonza Butler.
Time and again, we have been told what choices we can and cannot make. We have come together across race and across place to respond to questions about our rights with clarity and resolve. Nursing home workers in 33 facilities that have increased.
Yeah, that's a little hard to hear, but that's the announcement video today released by California Governor Gavin Newsom. He's chosen the woman who runs Emily's List and lives in Maryland. She doesn't even live in California. Lives in Maryland. The abortion industry mogul is now going to have a United States Senate seat. For more on this story, I want to go to Matthew Foldi. He's a political reporter for The Spectator, a former congressional candidate, and he joins us now. Matthew, good to have you with us, sir.
And importantly, a Marylander.
And importantly, a Marylander. So your neighbor
is like California's new senator.
Yeah, your neighbor's going to be a senator now. What do you think of that?
I think that, you have to obviously expect that in a situation like this, Gavin Newsom will appoint an insane leftist, defund the police activist to the Senate, which he did. But what I wasn't expecting was for it to be a Marylander. And look, as a Maryland guy, I'm thrilled to have a third senator. Mm-hmm. I think she will be looking out for Silver Spring, where she lives and votes. But if I am one of the over 1 million black women in California, remember Newsom, he walks back pledges all the time, but he pledged during his contentious recall, if I need to appoint a senator, I will appoint a black woman. He also said this person will be a caretaker and not run for re-election before walking that back last week. But yes, I am thrilled. But the fact that Newsom felt like he needed to go all the way across the country, almost as far as you could possibly go to fulfill this promise, also raises some questions of basic competency on his team, right? If you were dead set on picking the head of Emily's List, how did you not say to her, hey, can you maybe, A, scrub your online Twitter and LinkedIn profiles of your Maryland residency? I was the one who found that, and then it led me down a rabbit hole, which had me confirm last night that she registered to vote in Maryland last year. It's kind of basic failures of competency. Or Newsom said, you know what, we know this, and we just don't care. We're doing it anyway.
Right, totally. And so there are a couple of locations that you have located that show that she claims to be from Maryland, because that is where she's from. So on her Twitter account, it said, as of yesterday, it said that she was located in Maryland. On Emily's List's website, they very proudly say on her About Us page that she lives in Maryland. Now, what's interesting about all of this is in the last 24 hours, this is such a perfect Democrat story, by the way, because it has every feature of the modern Democrat Party. In the last 24 hours, they've erased all of the evidence of her living in Maryland from all of these websites.
Yeah. And the solution that they've proposed, by the way, is, she's just going to get, or already has, another house in California. She's just like you and me. Who does not have two homes in some of the most expensive places in America? She's just like us.
Just like us. Bi-coastal getaways. Everyone's got them.
Exactly.
So Laphonza Butler. And another piece here that I think is probably worth dwelling on is how much money her organization has explicitly raised and given to Democrats through the years. On their website, Matthew Foldi, they brag about some $850 million that they have spent so far with the sole purpose of electing Democrats. So in case you're wondering how much it costs to buy a Senate seat and not have voters involved at all, We've got a price tag here, $850 million.
Interestingly, to that point, remember that Gavin Newsom had an opportunity to appoint a relatively moderate black woman who actually lives in California, someone like San Francisco Mayor London Breed, who is at least mildly in support of police. But the fact that he didn't is very telling. And you're right, there's, this price tag on the California Senate seat. But importantly, think about what this means for people like Adam Schiff, Barbara Lee, and Katie Porter, who have been running for this Senate race. I think it's very possible, at least with Katie Porter, you will see some potential pressure on her to run for re-election. Right now, the top candidate Democrats have in that seat was recently arrested for drunk driving. Meanwhile, Katie Porter, of course, infamously dumped boiling hot mashed potatoes on her husband, but I don't think that's a crime. So they might try and say, hey, clearly you're not going to win here, right? But it's also interesting. There are so many dynamics at play here. There's also the Pelosi angle here, right? Pelosi, who said she's running again, she's not stepping aside. She's all in for Adam Schiff. So where does this leave her in this now at least four-way Senate primary, assuming that no one else bows out? It also shows on a federal level, how weak the Congressional Black Caucus is. I think 3 days ago, they wrote to Gavin Newsom saying, hey, please appoint Barbara Lee. She is already a black woman who you've said you would appoint. And he completely ignored them as well. But this is going to be an interesting thing moving forward as well, because with her role living in Maryland and having this national donor presence, she could, by virtue of just the organization she used to run, she could very quickly become a fairly important figure in Democratic politics, even though most people, including a lot of people in California, have no idea who this woman is.
Yeah, totally. Well, at least conveniently for her, once she joins the Senate, she'll have a house nearby, which, of course, is the house she lives in right now. So there's that.
And registered to vote in last year. I can't emphasize enough. She probably voted for Jamie Raskin for Congress last year and is now going to be a senator from California.
Isn't that amazing? So Laphonza Butler.
It says that you or I could be appointed a senator from somewhere we don't live. Why not? It's great.
Now, do we know yet whether or not she is going to throw her hat in the ring to keep the seat?
So there's no determination on that yet. However, Newsom, who is as legitimate as his hair is product-free, he said, I will only appoint a temporary senator who will not run for re-election. He walked back last week. So if you are a relatively young Democrat appointed to the U.S. Senate for the largest state in America, I think there is a 0% chance that you're not taking that and running, right? Yeah. He could have appointed an elder statesman who would have not. He could have appointed, if he broke his pledge, Barbara Boxer, who actually retired from the Senate. He could have appointed her and said, hey, it's yours for another year. Let the Dems sort it out. But if you have the president of Emily's List at a time where Democrats really only have abortion to run on next year, I think it's just it is hard to believe that she's going to say, you know what, I'll just be senator for a couple months.
Yeah, it is interesting. I mean, that is obviously the reason this occurred. I mean, in addition to, there's a lot of converging reasons. One is the amount of money that's at play. They're giving the abortion industry its very own Senate seat, $850 million raised so far, and many more millions in the future for these Democrats. They want to call attention to the issue of abortion because they think, as you pointed out, that that's a winning issue for them. But really, this woman doesn't get this job were it not for her unbridled support for human sacrifice. And here she is going to the United States Senate.
The point you just said is also important on how Emily's List, in essence, has its own personal senator now. I think it's not just that, though. This is a senator, certainly not for the state of California, right? 0 people elected this person. Of course, anyone is eligible to be appointed. Think about, though, when Gavin Newsom appointed Alex Padilla, the other United States senator from California who was appointed by Gavin Newsom. This was at least a statewide elected official who people have voted for in the past, right? But the difference here is this is a senator, in addition to being for Emily's List, for Gavin Newsom. For Gavin Newsom, 2028, so he can cash in as many chits as he can with the pro-abortion groups in America. But it also could be a senator, for Gavin Newsom in 2024, right? We all know there are obvious questions about Biden's physical and mental health. Gavin Newsom is doing everything he possibly can to remind Democrats that he exists. He was squatting like a homeless person in San Francisco at the GOP debate, willing to talk to anyone and everyone there about Taylor Swift or anything else under the sun.
Right.
And while he himself, as far as I'm aware, does not identify as a black woman, he will be able to say, look, skip over Kamala, and I'm ready to rock and roll in 2024 if you need me. Fast forward to 2028, he will be term limited out of the governor's office.
Yes.
And he will now for sure not be a United States senator. It's much easier to run for president if everyone's paying attention to you all the time, right? But come 2027, he's going to be unemployed. So this is an investment in the future for him. At least he'll be able to say, look, I gave Emily's List one of its biggest wins ever. I made its president an unelected U.S. senator. Keep that in mind when you guys are picking a presidential candidate in 2028. But I wouldn't dismiss 2024 as well.
Okay, so give me your sense of the media coverage of all of this, because the only thing I've really seen is California set to get its first black woman lesbian senator, as if those are the most important details here. Whereas I kind of think that $850 million for Democrats and and millions of abortions per year, that seems like a bigger deal to me.
Well, let's also not forget the other historic landmark that this is making, which is that, as far as I know, California is now getting its first Marylander U.S. senator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sorry, I should have included that.
Yeah, Maryland, we matter too here, right? We just got a new senator. As far as the media coverage goes, though, it's predictably horrible. To the extent that her Maryland residency is even mentioned, it's as an afterthought, as opposed to, hey, are we serious? There are over 1 million black women living in California, unlike their new senator, who Newsom said, none of you are good enough for me. So that is an important thing. It's not just also that she lives here. She's voting in Maryland, and she will be a senator from California, which is literally the other side of the country. Now, there was the Newsom spin on this is it's just like Dick Cheney changing his residency to Wyoming before he became announced as George Bush's vice president. And I think that is what Newsom's office said. I think that's completely insane, because at least Dick Cheney had the foresight to do it before he was announced, right? Whereas this new senator said, I don't even care. I'm just going to leave it until I'm called out. And as you said, they've now rewritten history, removing Maryland from her Twitter bio, from her Emily's List official biography. But that, to me, again, it kind of goes back to Gavin Newsom. How did they let this slip? Yeah. How can you possibly not do a basic vetting? I did more vetting of this senator seemingly driving home from the horrible Patriots game last night than Gavin Newsom's political operation. Or they did it and they just didn't care. I'm not sure which is worse,
right.
But as he is trying to position himself as the savior of the Democratic Party, basic competence is something that he needs to be projecting. So I think this reflects incredibly poorly on him as he's trying to make the case to Democrats that he's their savior. Okay, here he is ready to make history with this new Maryland appointee to the U.S. Senate. And he can't even do that properly, let alone govern the state of California properly, right? I mean, California, horrible. But basic competence, even in making this appointment, shows that he is really suffering from judgment problems. And if he's saying to Democrats, hey, jettison Biden, who's also suffering from obvious judgment problems, this is a tough case to make.
Matthew Foldi, finally, Laphonza Butler, as we've talked about so frequently here in this conversation, is a black female lesbian Marylander. Adam Schiff is none of those things. And obviously, those are the things that Democrats prize. What are the chances Adam Schiff can actually win this race now?
Honestly, it may be higher because now there are two black women running in this race. You have Barbara Lee and potentially Laphonza Brown. Now, remember, we don't yet know if she's going to run for the full term. I think she would be crazy not to. I think the assumption is that she will, given Newsom breaking that promise last week. But this is California we're talking about, right? It is really anyone's ballgame. Mm-hmm. And as before this happened, before Feinstein died last week, the three main candidates, Schiff, Porter, and Lee, had to at least on some level try and appeal to Republicans to vote for them because remember, Senate elections in California are top two. So you can have a Democrat in a Democrat advance, you can have a Democrat in a Republican advance, et cetera, et cetera. So it'll be interesting to see how her presumed presence, will affect things. If she does not end up running, I think Schiff has a great chance of winning. If she is running, it's tough to say. No one knows who this woman is.
Yes.
So what is going to be the power of incumbency, especially when you're running against another black woman who's been in the race already, who does have a lot of institutional support? Where does Katie Porter fit into this with Elizabeth Warren backing and presumably of the backing of the pour boiling mashed potatoes on your husband lobby?
Yep.
Where does Adam Schiff come in with the Russiagate, community? Porter and Schiff, remember, are raising tens of millions of dollars. And Donald Trump has actually been helping Adam Schiff, I think, by continuing to attack him. So it's very possible we have Senator Schiff. It's possible we have Senator Porter.
Sure.
It's possible we have Senator Lee. We already are going to get Senator Butler. I think it's impossible to kind of predict based on what we know now how that will look out. But I am not going to say to you, you're right, Adam Schiff is a white dude, but it's impossible that he'll be elected U.S. Senator, right? Joe Biden beat, Kamala Harris, Amy Klobuchar, et cetera, in 2020. So this is going to be a great case study of a bunch of colliding factors.
Yeah.
Race, gender, sexuality, incumbency, money, name ID, all playing out in the craziest state in America.
Yeah, and who knows? Maybe Adam Schiff will say that he's a lesbian because he's married to a woman. I mean, you never know at this point.
I mean, at this point, Vince, maybe you just get elected senator in California if residency doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If, basic, common sense doesn't matter. Why not have you win? I don't know.
It's
I'd vote for
perfectly
you over these people.
Thank you, Matt. I really appreciate that. I'm about $850 million short of getting that seat, but I really appreciate the vote of confidence. Thank you, sir. Nice to talk to you today, Matthew Foldi. Coming up on the Vince Coglianese Show, the latest out of Jamaal Bowman. He's got a new explanation for why he yanked the fire alarm to, quote, open a door. I like to call him Congressman Slowman. And then you've got Matt Gaetz versus Kevin McCarthy and Joe Biden. New fears among Democrats that he might, shock, be senile is ahead on the Vince Coglianese Show. Good afternoon to you. 3:35 now. News Talk 105.9 WMAL, where we're making sense of the news. Coming up, Attorney General Jason Miyares from Virginia is with us at 5 o'clock. Then Congressman Andy Biggs is here at 5:30. Another budget debate going on in Washington. When do we get back to regular order? Did you know it's been many, many years since a budget was passed on time in Washington? 1996 was the last time that actually happened. Since then, it's just been chaos every single year. Can we put a stop to that crap? We'll talk to the congressman about that at 5:30. It won't be this year. Oh, what a disaster. You can join us at 888-630-9625, 888-630-WMAL. Yes, we still have to get into that drama between Matt Gaetz and Kevin McCarthy, as Gaetz is seeking to unseat the Speaker of the House. And we also have Jamaal Bowman. I'm just waiting for this video to come out. They say that they've got video footage of Bowman doing this. All we've all seen is the still image of him in the Cannon House office building, taking a fire alarm and ripping it down. It's just him grabbing the fire alarm and bringing it down. It's very obviously Jamaal Bowman. There's no mistaking that guy. Black Mr. Clean, just pulling the fire alarm. and everyone's like, well, we have to wait to find out what happened. How did the fire alarm go off? Here's Jamaal Bowman. Well, here's the effect of Jamaal Bowman's handiwork. Crazy. Fire alarm going off all over the Cannon House office building. And, this is in the midst of these votes that are supposed to be taking place on the House floor, because there was going to be, Kevin McCarthy and company had put together a package, and they said, hey, look, we're going to extend spending in the United States government for another 45 days, putting us into mid-November. And we're going to have a little bit of disaster relief in there. And we won't put any of Ukraine, no new Ukraine funding. That's not going to be in there. And we'll keep operating the government at its unprecedented, untenable spending levels for the next 45 days while we continue to debate amongst ourselves what our spending patterns should look like. Remember, we're in $33 trillion of debt. 1/5 of all government expenditures right now go to debt service payments, the interest on the debt. And that number is about to go even higher as those interest rates are really pushing up. So we are at a level that we cannot sustain. It is not good for us. It's going to wreck the whole country. It'll make your dollar is not going to go anywhere near as far as it used to. This is all thanks to our government and nobody being that serious about dealing with this problem. So McCarthy puts forward this bill and drops it and says, okay, 45 days. And for all intents and purposes, all it is it just extends the same out-of-control spending. That's it. That's really all it is. But Democrats wanted to throw a wrench in the plans. They were trying to delay this. Hakeem Jeffries is the Democrat leader, and he used something called the magic minute. You've heard this phrase before, the magic minute. This is where the leaders of the respective parties get to speak for as long as they want in the United States House. The Senate has the filibuster, but in the House, it's really just the leaders of the two parties who can get away with this. Hakeem Jeffries invoked his magic minute to speak for nearly an hour to delay the passage of this spending package. You know, the one that needed to get passed so urgently to keep the government open. Democrats were trying to delay it this weekend. And then additionally, Jamaal Bowman goes for the fire alarm. Now, why would he do that? Why would Jamaal Bowman do that? Well, if you listen to CBS New York, they describe what happened and what Jamaal Bowman's office started describing to their, loyal little lickspittles in the press.
And just before the House was scheduled to vote on that funding bill, New York Congressman Jamaal Bowman pulled a fire alarm inside the Cannon House office building. This photo has just been released by U.S. Capitol Police. Congressman Bowman
There's no mistaking it. It's definitely him.
Told reporters he was trying to get through a door and thought the alarm would open that door.
What?
His spokesperson says it was an accident and that the congressman regrets any confusion. Some Republicans in the House want Bowman censured for his actions.
Okay.
Capitol Police say they are investigating.
Now, if that is true, we need IQ tests for Congress. Like, there is no way you can be a member of Congress. No more. Jamaal Bowman, AOC, I'm sorry. You've got to go. John Fetterman, you're out. Hank Johnson, goodbye. We need some IQ tests, please. You cannot capsize an island by having troops stand too much on one side of it, and a fire alarm doesn't open a door. That's not how it works at all. So there are only two options. Jamaal Bowman is an insurrectionist who is trying to disrupt the lawful order of Congress, right? What's going on in Congress, congressional proceedings, or he's a stone cold moron. Those are your options. There is no middle ground on this. Moron, insurrectionist. Take your pick. Over on MSNBC, they tried to explain all of this away to their viewers very quickly. This is Yasmin Vasofian reporting on what happened and taking Bowman's side here.
There was a mention of Jamaal Bowman, Congressman Jamaal Bowman, and the pulling of some sort of fire alarm. And I just want to read for you some of the reporting so you understand what actually went on there.
So you understand. I'm going to clarify for you right now what happened. I have virtually no information, but I have to tell you, the Democrat is a good person.
There were some reports that began to emerge about Representative Bowman, who was seen pulling some sort of fire alarm in the Cannon House office building earlier today. We got a statement on that saying Congressman Bowman did not realize he would trigger a building alarm as he was rushing to make an urgent vote.
The thing says alarm. It literally says he didn't realize it would trigger an alarm if he pulled the handle that said alarm. It's like if there was a sign that says, don't touch this button. He didn't realize touching that button was not allowed. It says, don't touch the button. And he touched it. It says alarm. He didn't realize it would set an alarm.
On that, saying Congressman Bowman did not realize he would trigger a building alarm as he was rushing to make an urgent vote. The congressman regrets any confusion, just to clarify some things on that, because I know there was likely some folks kind of scratching their heads wondering what it was they were asking Speaker McCarthy about.
So there you have it. We'll take the government's word for it and no further questions. That's MSNBC's interpretation of events. Well, he said he was trying to open the door, so that's probably fine. Meanwhile, thinking people everywhere reacted to this with, huh? What? What are you talking about? Why would he pull an alarm to open a door? That's insane. Even Jake Tapper was saying, this is nuts. Here he is with AOC.
I'll be honest, it doesn't really make sense to me, his explanation. Have you talked to him? What's going on there?
What's going on? Would you please give us some way to wiggle out of this ridiculous scandal?
And I think if you actually do see some of the photos of the signs, I think there's something to be said about the government's about to shut down. There's a vote clock that's going down. The exits that are normally open in that building were suddenly closed.
I love that she's blaming. You hear her say that, you look at some of the signs, it's kind of confusing. So what are you saying? The government is bad at producing signs? Is there anything the government is good at?
So you pulled a fire alarm?
So what I am here to say is that House administration and U.S. Capitol Police and Jamaal Bowman are an active, and he's fully participating in saying there was a misunderstanding. But what I do think is important to raise,
he's on camera yanking the alarm,
is the fact that Republicans, representatives like Nicole Malliotakis and others, immediately moved to file motions to censure, motions to expel, before there has even been conversations that are finished to even see if there was a misunderstanding here.
Kind of makes sense. Kick him out. He's either a nefarious figure, someone who's trying to disrupt the lawful proceedings of Congress. We know what happens when you do that. What happens when you disrupt the lawful proceedings of Congress? If you obstruct a congressional proceeding, boy, you get your tail thrown into the D.C. jail. You stay there in solitary confinement. And then you're sentenced to upwards of 30 years in prison, even if you aren't in the Capitol. If you even say you support Congress having its affairs disrupted, you could serve decades in prison, right? That's the standard now. So what happens if Jamaal Bowman yanks the alarm to disrupt the lawful proceedings of Congress? So either he's doing it for nefarious purposes or he's not competent enough to be in Congress. I'm sorry. He's mentally deficient. He has to go. AOC objects. Here's a Jamaal Bowman question to Hakeem Jeffries, the leader of the Democrats in the House.
Are you concerned about the accusation that Congressman Jamaal Bowman is accused of pulling a fire alarm in a congressional office building, and what are the next steps here?
I haven't seen the video. Until I see the video, I'll have no further comment.
It's bad if Hakeem Jeffries can't offer a reflexive defense here. Jamaal Bowman does have an evolving defense for all of this. I'll tell you about that in a moment. Marjorie Taylor Greene reacted to this. She was out on the steps of the Capitol yesterday.
He violated the exact same law that January 6th defendants are being prosecuted for every single day. He violated the exact same law, interrupting an official proceeding, and by pulling a fire alarm. It's on video, and the Capitol Police have the information.
Did you see?
This is outrageous. They have it on video.
Have you seen the video?
I haven't seen the video yet, but I'm going to be demanding it. I'm demanding that the Department of Justice prosecute him the same way they prosecuted January 6th defendants. It's the exact same law. Exact same law. This is outrageous. He's a Democrat representative.
Yeah, so that's why there will be no DOJ prosecution. Here's Speaker Kevin McCarthy Saturday.
I was really appalled of watching Democrats' actions today. To delay it, to get to a shutdown. But when we found that an individual elected to Congress would pull a fire alarm, that's a new low. We watched how people have been treated.
What was the last new low prior to this? If Jamaal Bowman just set the new low, what was the prior new low? Was that Fetterman arriving on the floor of the Senate wearing a hoodie?
If they'd done something wrong in this Capitol, it'd be interesting to see how he is treated on what he was trying to obstruct when it came to the American public.
Yeah, Democrats are not much for norms or decorum, are they? If you think of Nancy Pelosi tearing up the State of the Union speech behind the President of the United States, or Chuck Schumer standing on the Supreme Court steps threatening Supreme Court justices, or Chuck Schumer going on national television and threatening Donald Trump with the intelligence community coming after him. They're not very much for these norms, are they? Is Jamaal Bowman, why wouldn't Jamaal Bowman think it's appropriate to yank a fire alarm in order to cause a distraction and a delay? That'd be totally par for the course. Maxine Waters out there telling Democrats that their obligation in public is to get into the faces of their political opponents and intimidate them. The President of the United States, the leading Democrat in the country, sicking his Justice Department on his political opponents to lock them up. Matthew Graves, the U.S. Attorney, Democrat in Washington, D.C., who's made it his life's mission to lock up Biden's political opponents. Why wouldn't Jamaal Bowman arrive at the conclusion that yanking a fire alarm is a low-level contribution to the very thing Democrats are doing every single day? Of course he would. Of course he would. Now, Jamaal Bowman, for his part, is upset that the press is giving us any attention.
Do you still stand by your statement that when the fire alarm was an accident?
You know, I don't know why this has gotten so much attention. I was literally just in a rush to go vote, man. That's all it was.
Mm-hmm. Are you afraid of any repercussions from leadership?
Well, then why would you stop to pull the fire alarm?
Or from legally from Capitol Police?
I mean, listen, I take responsibility for what I did, you know, but like I said, I was in a rush to go vote, and, you know, the investigation will sort everything else out.
Have you talked to Jeffries about it?
Oh, yeah, of course. That's day one, yes.
How was that conversation?
Well, I got to keep that between me and the leader, so I'm not going to share that publicly here, but we've been in touch with each other.
You know, there are tunnels that connect the Cannon House office building directly to the Congress. You don't need to walk out a door to do that. You just take the tunnel. That's a direct shot right to the Capitol. He was in a rush, he said. So he went to what he knew was a locked door and pulled a fire alarm? Does that make any sense? Like, to anybody? Peter Doocy asked Coringe about this today at the White House.
Would President Biden ever try to get out of a meeting by pulling a fire alarm?
Are you talking about something specifically?
Oh my God. She really went for... I love how, like, there's a wheel in her head, and one of the answers, you spin it, it starts clicking, tick, 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 and one of the spaces it lands on is play dumb. Play dumb, and it's a big space. It's a big space, and she lands there frequently. She's buying time to figure out how to answer this question. Are you talking about something specifically?
Would President Biden ever try to get out of a meeting by pulling a fire alarm?
Are you talking about something specifically?
A Democratic member of Congress pulled a fire alarm around a series of votes. No fire. Is that appropriate?
What I can tell you is I've not spoken to the president about this. And so just not going to comment. I would leave it up to, I know there's a House process moving forward right now. I'll leave it to the House.
That's another position on her wheel, which is I'm not going to talk about that. I'm going to leave it to somebody else. You know, that's funny. Peter Doocy describing Biden pulling a fire alarm to get out of a meeting. That would require too much active thinking on Biden's part. I don't think Biden would be nimble enough to dive for the fire alarm. But it does remind me, you ever see that old Dave Chappelle sketch where he's the president of the United States and he's sitting there and he's trying to avoid answering a question? And he just knocks over an entire pitcher of water and he makes a run for it. Yeah, that's kind of what I'm envisioning. I don't think Biden could do that. I don't think he's got the physical dexterity required to pull off that maneuver. All right, more coming up in a moment on what Jamaal Bowman is saying today. You'll never believe the position he's backed himself up into in order to make all of this go away. All right, so Jamaal Bowman pulls a fire alarm in the House office building. He's got a new defense today. You ready for this? Republicans are Nazis. It's not even a defense. He's just attacking Republicans. He says they're Nazis. Here's the piece from Politico today. Representative Jamaal Bowman is now circulating a list of talking points to fellow Democrats in a bid to stop the burgeoning GOP push to punish him after he set off a House fire alarm during Saturday's chaotic spending votes. The New York Democrats press secretary sent a memo on Monday afternoon to all House Democratic offices requesting they defend Bowman for the flap over the alarm, which has prompted a Republican push to sanction him. A copy of the office's communique was obtained by Politico. One suggested response from Bowman's office to questions about the incident, quote, I believe Congressman Bowman when he says this was an accident. Republicans need to instead focus their energy on the Nazi members of their party before anything else. So there you go. So instead of just explaining himself or, admitting he was wrong, apologizing, resigning from Congress in disgrace, no, Republicans are Nazis. Let's go to Willie in Culpeper on line 1. Willie, good afternoon. You're on the Vince Coglianese Show.
Good afternoon, Vince. This man was a high school principal, I understand, for many years.
Yeah, middle school principal,
Yeah, school principal. How many fire alarms did he participate in? When I went to school, we had them at least once or twice a year, fire alarms. And I'm sure you did too at your school when you were a boy.
Sure. Yeah, you do a fire drill.
So he's an insurrectionist. And the Nazis are the Dems. So they're pointing us. No. They're the ones. Less freedom, more taxes. They're not on our side.
Yeah, amen. Thank you, Willie. As the great Chris Plant likes to say, I agree with you there, Willie. So Bowman is an insurrectionist, Willie correctly points out, based on the prevailing standard for insurrectionists, disrupting a congressional proceeding, trying to shut it down. And he's fine today. In fact, he feels so confident about what he did, he's now calling Republicans Nazis. It's remarkable, isn't it? All right, more on what actually happened this weekend in Congress other than a fire alarm being pulled. And Joe Biden's brain. Democrats are beginning to worry about it.